So my talk, I have in the last 20-30 minutes, when the previous speaker was speaking, I was listening to her, and I have Dr. Urvashi has given me some idea about these sessions that she has been organizing along with her colleagues. My talk is going to be similar but also a little different in terms of what I'm going to speak about. क्योंकि थिएटर की जो करियर है, थिएटर में जब हम करियर के बारे में सोचते हैं तो वो बाकी के जो फील्ड्स हैं जहाँ पे हम डॉक्टर पीपल बिकम डॉक्टर्स, इंजीनियर्स, टीचर्स एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फॉर, जितने भी फील्ड्स हैं उससे थोड़ा सा अलग है. और सिर्फ थिएटर ही नहीं, एनी आर्ट फॉर्म, एनी पर्सन हु इज प्रैक्टिसिंग एन आर्ट फॉर्म एज अ करियर, एज समथिंग, and I would not even like to call it a career. I think to think about theater as a livelihood is slightly different from any other field. This doesn't mean that theater is is the only option, of course not. But in today's world, when we look at the idea of even in the pandemic, many of you must have seen that people went on social media and created their short stories, started to perform. Even the daily rituals like cooking and so on also became part of a performance. Many of us posted our videos and so on, and in a way, theoretically or very broadly speaking, we all perform, right? We all perform our genders, we all perform our social economic backgrounds, we all perform our role in our families, in our institutions that we work in, that we go for studies, and also as human beings in the society. And when I say we all perform, I don't mean it in a negative sense, but what I mean is that there is the life in itself is an everyday performance, right? So my talk is going to revolve around, as Mary has already said, around some of the opportunities that theater also provides us as an integral part of our society and us as social beings. So I'm going to show a very short PPT. It's basically just to make it more visual. I will be mostly talking, but I'll also would like to show two very small clips from a film which was made in the 1980s, and it talks about theater and various aspects of it. But those films I will show in between. Can I share the screen?
Let me. Ms. Komita, the screen sharing is enabled for you.
Yeah, I'll just. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's visible. It's
okay,
visible.
Great. So, career in theater. I actually want to speak, I want to begin my talk with a little story. And I'll come to this quotation by a very, very famous, eminent theatre person who passed away a few years ago, Girish Karnad. We have seen him in films, we have seen him in performing, we have seen, some of us might also have seen productions, great productions in Kannada theatre, in English theatre, in our lives. So what is the birth of drama? I want to begin by that. कि थिएटर जो है वो शुरू कहाँ से हुआ. और एक कहानी जो थिएटर का पहला, जिसको एक किताब की तरह जिसको देखा जा सकता है, या जिसके अंदर थिएटर कैसे करते हैं उसके कोड्स के बारे में सबसे पहली जो किताब जिसको हम थिएटर की दुनिया में बात करते हैं वो है नाट्यशास्त्र. और नाट्यशास्त्र के जो पहला चैप्टर है उसके अंदर एक कहानी है कि विच इज़ अबाउट द बर्थ ऑफ ड्रामा. एंड व्हाट इज़ द बर्थ ऑफ ड्रामा अकॉर्डिंग टू दैट चैप्टर. It's a very interesting story. So in the third BC, second BC, third BC, and it's also known as myth of birth of drama, because it's a mythological kind of a story. कि जब धरती के ऊपर बहुत सारे लोग जो हैं वो बहुत अलग अलग तरह की कोट अनकोट इमोरल एक्टिविटीज़ के अंदर इंगेज हो गए, तो जो क्रिएटर ऑफ द अर्थ जिनको माना जाता है हिंदू मिथोलॉजी के अंदर, ब्रह्मा, ही सेड दैट हमको जो है वो कुछ और क्रिएट करना चाहिए जिसके अंदर लोग इंगेज हों. एंड व्हाट डिड ही डू? ही बेसिकली क्रिएटेड द आइडिया दैट हम जो है वो ड्रामा को हम क्रिएट करें, और वो काम करने के लिए उन्होंने भरत मुनि जो कि एक ह्यूमन थे उनको उन्होंने वो काम दे दिया दैट दिस इज द टेक्स्ट एंड नाउ यू गो एंड स्टेज इट. And what was the text about? The text was about the conflict between the gods and the demons. So when that was staged for the first time, gods obviously liked it, and the demons said that, you know, it is showing us in a poor light and so on, and there was a conflict, but gods eventually, you know, there was a conflict and so on, there was a war, and then the gods won. But, you know, besides this, and then the second production of that play was also staged. What Girish Karnad in his message on the World Theatre Day on 2002 says is that it is not the myth, it is not so much the myth that how theatre was born is so much relevant. More than that, what does the discourse that this myth actually plays out, or what is the discourse, इसके अंदर क्या चीज़ कही जा रही है उसको समझने की ज़रूरत है. And what he says is that what Brahma said in that chapter, in Natya Shastra chapter, it also is written, and Girish Karnad said that this is probably the crux, and we as humans, or we as theatre people or historians, we can interpret this myth according to our understanding. And he says that drama is a representation of state of the three world. It incorporates the ethical goals of life, the spiritual, the secular, the sensuous, which means the affect, which means that how emotionally, you know, a speaker before me was talking about emotional intelligence, and you know how it affects us, how it makes us feel sad, how it makes us feel joyful, and so on. And he also says that there is actually no wisdom, no art, no emotion which is not found in theatre. So the whole idea of the rasa theory, that there is also Veer Ras, there is also Saundarya Shastra, there is also you know, sadness, and we feel so many emotions when we see a theatre production. And if I ask, you know, you can also write it in the chat box, that what was the first play that you have ever seen? It could be in your school, it could have been in your college, it could have been, you know, maybe some of you are already practicing theatre, some of the faculty members. I know a lot of teachers who also do theatre. In their, you know, after they have done with teaching, they also are engaged in the practice of teaching theatre and doing theatre. So theatre is, हम में से कोई शायद ऐसा नहीं होगा जिसने कभी ना कभी कोई ना कोई परफॉर्मेंस जो है वो नहीं देखी होगी. अगर कोई मुझे कहता है कि हमने कभी कोई थिएटर नहीं देखा, तो मेरा उनसे सवाल ये होता है कि क्या आपने कभी बचपन में या अपने ग्रोइंग अप ईयर्स के अंदर या रिसेंटली क्या आपने रामलीला देखी है दशहरे से पहले? What is Ramlila? It is theatre, right? And when we look at theatre and any kind of performing arts, whether it is dance, whether it is music, whether it is drama, we find that it is actually an integral part of our human culture. And not only of our human culture, but also an integral part of our society. Because what theatre also can and has the potential to do is to talk about the concerns that all of us as a social being feel. And you know, you use theatre, many groups in Delhi, across India, across the world, use theatre or use theatre as a method, as a tool to talk about social issues, right? And when we think about in Indian context, when we think about theatre, it is also very difficult. अक्सर लोग मुझसे पूछते हैं कि I want to pursue theatre, तो मैं theatre कौन सा theatre करूं? तो मेरा उनसे ये सवाल होता है कि आप कौन सा थिएटर करना चाहते हैं, आप कितने तरह के थिएटर्स के बारे में जानते हैं. और जब हम इंडियन कॉन्टेक्स्ट की बात करते हैं, वी फाइंड दैट एक्चुअली इट इज़ वेरी वेरी डिफिकल्ट. इवन इफ आई टॉक टू यू फॉर लेट्स से 3 hours of a session, I won't be able to capture even 1% of how diverse and how plural our Indian theatre tradition is. So there are many genres, there are many forms, techniques. For example, you have urban, you have semi-urban, you have quote-unquote folk forms, you have amateur theatre, you have Gujarati and Marathi commercial theatre, you have theatre of the Northeast, you have theatre, happening in a remote village in Andhra, you have Kudiyattam, you have Yakshagana, you also have at least more than 100 forms. Yakshagana is the only form that we usually get to know about, but even if you look at a state like Karnataka, every district has at least 4 to 5 local theatre dramatic forms or performance styles, right? So the theatre landscape of India, I think it's very important to understand if we want to look at theatre as an opportunity, is very very vast. It's very very plural. कोई एक तरह का theatre वहाँ पे नहीं होता है. तो रामनगर के अंदर रामलीला होती है, और साउथ के अंदर अगर आप जाएंगे अलग अलग, चाहे केरल में आप देख लें, चाहे कथकली अगर आप देख लें, आप पंजाब का थिएटर देख लें, आप गुजरात का कमर्शियल थिएटर देख लें, तो आपको अलग अलग तरह के उसके अंदर से सेंसिबिलिटीज आपको मिलते हैं, राइट? आप एमेच्योर थिएटर देख लें, ऐसे लोग जो कि दिल्ली के अंदर एक ग्रुप हुआ करता था बहुत, अभी भी वो ग्रुप है यात्रिक. सो मेनी ऑफ द एमिनेंट मीडिया पीपल दैट यू सी, Suneet Tandon and Tejeshwar Singh used to be there, and so on and so forth. Sushma Seth, all these people were part of this English theatre group called Yatrik, right? So amateur theatre, जिसके अंदर you are not being paid, but you are doing theatre for the love of it, because you want to do it. In commercial theatre, you also get paid, right? And I'll come to that what are the current opportunities that one can think about if one wants to make theatre as a livelihood choice. But one thing that I want to say at the very outset, that when we look at theatre, people get into theatre, when I was I was in 10th class, and when I passed my boards, I got very good marks in most of the subjects, so, and specifically science. So in my household, one of my uncles who was very serious about education, studies and so on, and was my mentor at that time, he said, because you have got such good marks, you need to get into science streams, right? And I took that. And after I finished that, I started thinking about, I'll, appear for engineering exams. I did. I cleared some. I didn't clear some. So on and so forth. I also went for a medical exam, medical entrance test. I couldn't clear it. One of them I cleared it, but I didn't get a good rank, and so on. And then I got into in my later years, in my bachelor's and so on, I got into mass communication and journalism. So many of the fields that we look at as career options, sometimes, those fields, people tell us that, acha, aap isme achhe ho, aap ye karo. Aap isme achhe ho, aap ye wala field karo. They suggest us, they advise us. Sometimes there is also pressure. The previous speaker, she was talking about very, very important point in today's time is the peer pressure. कि मेरे आसपास के लोग क्या कर रहे हैं और मैं क्या करने वाला हूँ, मैं अपनी जिंदगी के साथ क्या करने वाला हूँ. People who get into theatre are not the people who are being forced to take theatre as a career choice, or forced to take theatre because they want to make a difference in the society by using theatre as a form, right? That does not mean लोग theatre करते हैं क्योंकि वो theatre करना चाहते हैं. They want to do theatre. They want to get involved in the form of theatre, right? तो किसी के तरफ से कोई प्रेशर नहीं होता है. अक्सर आर्ट्स के जब आप फील्ड देखते हैं, कि कोई प्रेशर नहीं है. My family has no background in theatre, right? I got into theatre just by chance, and then I got interested in that in later years, right? So one of the differences from other fields and any field of arts and performing arts, and particularly theatre, is that people choose to do theatre, right? It's nothing to do with कि मेरे किसी subject में कितने marks आए हैं और इसलिए मुझे theatre करना है, या ये इसलिए नहीं कि because my siblings are in a particular career and they have opted for particular career and there is a peer pressure on me and there is a sibling pressure on me and there is people want to do theatre because they do theatre. That's a difference between any other field. But one of the common things that I always say, that like any other field, whether it is education, whether it is tourism, the next session that you will be attending, whether it is engineering, whether it is becoming a doctor, or taking up any, you're preparing for civil services exams, anything, theatre also as a career, as an option that you want to choose, demands commitment, passion and discipline, right? That's a common thing. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि थिएटर मैं सिर्फ हॉबी के लिए करूंगी तो मैं कभी भी थिएटर के अंदर जा सकती हूँ. द प्रीवियस स्पीकर वेरी वेल सेड दैट हाफ योर वर्क विल बी डन. अगर you are punctual with your timings, right? Agar aap time management karna jante hain, if you can do a balance, right? And theater does teach us discipline. Theater teaches us how to work in a team. Theater teaches us that how to question what is happening around us and how to express through a dramatic form, how to look at it in a way that, what are the concerns of the society and how do I express it. Those concerns can be related to economic inequalities, gender inequalities. It can be about what is happening around us, so on and so forth. But whatever theater can do, it can only do if one is committed, one is passionate about it, and one is disciplined about it. ऐसा नहीं है कि आज मैं रिहर्सल में जाऊंगी और मैं कल रिहर्सल में नहीं जाऊंगी तो चलेगा. जैसे नौकरी में हम जाते हैं, वैसे ही हमें थिएटर को अगर हम करियर बनाते हैं या थिएटर को अगर हम एमेच्योर भी तरीके से भी करते हैं, तो भी हमको उन सभी चीज़ों को फॉलो करना पड़ेगा जो कि किसी भी और फील्ड को जब आप करियर बनाते हैं तो आपको करना पड़ता है. Just to very very briefly talk about that, if we look at Indian theatre, there are जब हम भरत मुनि के नाट्यशास्त्र की बात करते हैं तो संस्कृत थिएटर है, फिर हम थोड़ा और आगे आते हैं तो ट्रेडिशनल फोक फॉर्म्स हैं. 1800s के अंदर थिएटर जो है वो होने लगा था इंडिया के अंदर. और फिर जब हम लेट 18th सेंचुरी को जब हम देखते हैं तो वी सी दैट मॉडर्न थिएटर इज कमिंग इनटू इंडिया. And then we see in post independence India, we see that how, when colonial rule came into India, Shakespeare came to India at that time. I mean, Shakespeare's text came to India, and it also became like a canon, right? And then in post-independence India, we also see during colonial times that, there were organizations like the Indian People Theatre Associations who were also doing theatre and using different art forms, different folk forms to counter the British imperialism at that time in India. Post-independence हम देखते हैं कि हमारे देश के अंदर बहुत सारे नेशनल स्कूल ऑफ ड्रामा आता है, जहाँ पे थिएटर की प्रॉपर ट्रेनिंग जो है वो शुरू होती है. और बहुत सारे छोटे छोटे ग्रुप्स हैं जो कि 60s के डेकेड में, 70s के डेकेड में थिएटर करना शुरू करते हैं, छोटे छोटे ग्रुप्स में. लाइक पीपल हु आर एंथुजियास्टिक अबाउट थिएटर एज अ फॉर्म, दे कम टुगेदर एंड दे स्टार्ट डूइंग थिएटर. And then in the later years, 70s, 80s, we see a lot of experimental theatre is being done, especially in Maharashtra, especially in other parts of the country, not so, and also in North India. So if we look at theatre, it has a huge history. Like, like medicine, like we always had doctors in India, right? हमेशा वैद, पहले उनको शायद वैद कहते थे, फिर जब मेडिसिन की पढ़ाई शुरू होने लगी होगी तो वो लोग एक्चुअली उनको डिग्रीज मिलने लगी. उसी तरह से थिएटर भी जो है वो एक ऐसा ऑप्शन है, एक ऐसा उसका लेगेसी है कि वो 1800 बहुत बहुत पुरानी, मतलब नाट्यशास्त्र में जब बात कर रही हूँ तो मैं सेकेंड बीसी की बात कर रही हूँ, सेकेंड सेंचुरी बीसी की मैं बात कर रही हूँ. तो थिएटर का एक अपना एक बहुत ही बड़ा लंबा इतिहास है और उसके अंदर अलग अलग तरह का थिएटर करने वाले लोग इंडिया के अंदर एग्जिस्ट करते हैं. I just want to very briefly in 1 or 2 slides, I want to just say that the kind of theatre I do is actually amateur theatre, which means that all of us are doing something else for our livelihood, but we also meet in the evening or on Sundays or on holidays, and we perform in various areas where people live and work. The theatre group that I work with is already 50 years old. So we go and we perform on the streets of all over the country, and we perform where people are working. जो जिन बस्तियों में लोग रहते हैं हम वहाँ पे परफॉर्म करते हैं. We are primarily a street theatre group, but we also do proscenium theatre, and we also do theatre in, let's say, in campuses, in middle class colonies, again, in colleges and so on and so forth. And one of the things that I want to just very briefly talk about is that this whole idea of theatre as a social commitment is something which is very ingrained in our work. One of our founders, Safdar Hashmi, like Mary also mentioned it when she was introducing me, was doing a play when he was, killed in an attack, which happened, but that doesn't mean that those kind of attacks happen every day. But Safdar became a name which is synonymous to the idea of theater, which is socially relevant in India, right? Again, the kind of theater, no matter whether you do amateur theater, no matter whether you do commercial theater, these are the three things that you really need: commitment, passion, and time. And when I say commitment, passion, and time, I want to focus now on, for another 6 or 7 minutes, I'm going to talk about that there are two aspects through which we can enter into doing theater. One way is that first we have to do a training, right? Like, if you want to, when you go for MBBS is actually a training process, right? When you're doing engineering at IIT is actually a training. When you are going to CII in Delhi University, or you're doing DLED, you are actually doing training in education, right? Similarly, theater also needs training. Now, theater in training can also mean two things. One, that you go and join an institution that is giving training about acting, about direction, about about dramaturgy, about how to make a play, how to do costume designs, and so on. But also some of the people that I know, and like for example myself, I do not come from a trained theater background. I have never been to any drama school. Theater was part of the master's course, MA in Jamia Millia Islamia, that I was doing, and it was only a 1-year course in which I was taught street theater as a form of theater and puppet theater as a form of theater, right? But if you ask me that have I ever gone to a particular theater school, so that no. So how have I trained myself, or how have other people, people who do amateur theater, or commercial theater also, they train themselves? So one way that you go to institutions, that I will be talking to you about in 2 minutes, and one way that you start working with a theater group, that becomes your hands-on experience, right? So, and many of the theater groups, and I'm talking in context of Delhi right now, so I would say कि बहुत से ऐसे थिएटर के ग्रुप्स होते हैं दिल्ली के अंदर जिनके साथ जाके आप जुड़ सकते हैं, और वहाँ पे थिएटर करते 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 धीरे धीरे आप उस ट्रेनिंग को ले सकते हैं. तो वो उसको एक तरह से वो हैंड्स ऑन ट्रेनिंग होती है. ज़्यादातर आई वुड से 99% ऑफ द थिएटर ग्रुप्स that I am talking about in Delhi, training के लिए अगर आप उनसे जुड़ना चाहते हैं, they are not theatre schools, they are theatre groups, right? And lot of young people right now in Delhi are doing very very interesting theatre, right? तो उनके साथ जुड़ने का आपका कोई फीस भी नहीं होगा, आपको सिर्फ उनके साथ रेगुलरली काम करना होगा और आप उनके साथ वो चीज़ें सीख सकते हैं. And the other aspect I will talk about in 5 minutes is career in theatre. One of the very important way of training, or getting an entry into the world of theater, to understand how a play is made, is something that maybe many of the people who are right now present in this session, many of the students are already doing it. I don't know how many. And one thing that has become very very important platform for students to get interested in theater is something called campus theater. हर कॉलेज के अंदर एक ड्रामेटिक सोसाइटी होती है, उस सोसाइटी में स्ट्रीट प्ले भी होता है, उस सोसाइटी में प्रोसेनियम प्ले भी होता है. तो मैं जितने बहुत सारे यंग लोगों को जब जानती हूँ, तो उनका कोई ना कोई एक बैकग्राउंड रहा होता है कैंपस थिएटर के अंदर. कैंपस थिएटर, आई थिंक द 3 years ऑफ कैंपस थिएटर व्हेन यू आर डूइंग योर ग्रेजुएशन, or when you are doing your PG for 2 years in most of the private colleges, Delhi University colleges, IP University, many of them have these dramatic societies. So I would really urge that if you want to understand how theater works, even if you want to make it a career afterwards as a career opportunity, this is probably a good start, to get involved in your campus theater, because there you will understand the rigor of it. आपको रिसर्च करनी पड़ती है थिएटर, कोई नाटक बनाने के लिए आपको एक्टिंग की ट्रेनिंग लेनी पड़ती है, मूवमेंट की ट्रेनिंग लेनी पड़ती है, म्यूजिक की ट्रेनिंग लेनी पड़ती है, और जिन मुद्दों के बारे में आप नाटक कर रहे हैं उनको समझने के लिए भी आपको मेंटरशिप की जरूरत होती है. तो ये जो 3 साल होते हैं, ये बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग 3 साल हो सकते हैं, and I would highly urge, because you know the campus theater in Delhi right now is flourishing for the last 5-6 years, and I'm not talking about the pandemic year, but in the last 10 years, in fact, so many societies, you know, the Kirodimal College of Delhi University has this fabulous society called the Players. श्री राम SRCC, मैंने पिछले सालों में राजधानी कॉलेज के भी नाटक जो हैं वो देखे हैं. IP University has some really very interesting, very doing very very interesting work. So that becomes a first part of your training. That could become, if you want. The other part, as I said earlier, that you can also go and start working with groups, right? These are some of the photos of various groups that have been working in Delhi, and they do theater very very professionally. I also want to say that the amateur theater, you know, it doesn't mean that if I'm teaching in Delhi University in the daytime and I do theater only in the evening or on Sundays or on holidays or every day, मैं तो theater का performance मेरा हर रोज होता है, लेकिन ज़्यादातर ग्रुप्स जो हैं वो वीकेंड्स पे वो करते हैं. तो इसका मतलब एमेच्योर थिएटर का ये मतलब नहीं है कि एमेच्योर थिएटर प्रोफेशनल नहीं होता. एमेच्योर थिएटर भी उतना ही प्रोफेशनल होता है. द ओनली डिफरेंस बिटवीन एमेच्योर थिएटर एंड कमर्शियल थिएटर इज दैट इन एमेच्योर थिएटर द actors are not usually paid. In commercial theater, you are paid per production, right? Lot of people in Delhi are doing theater and they have their actors, they have the money to pay their actors, you know, to pay people who get associated with them. So getting associated with a group becomes an important way of training yourself in theater, because that is hands on. आपको वो काम करना है, स्टेज लगाना है, आपको बुकिंग करना है जहाँ पे आपको ऑडिटोरियम के अंदर काम करना है, आपको एक्टिंग सीखनी है, मूवमेंट सीखना है, आपको सेट्स कैसे बनाने हैं वो सीखना है, कॉस्ट्यूम कैसे बनाना है, सब कुछ आपको खुद करना है. और यहाँ पे मैं ये पॉइंट जरूर ऐड करना चाहती हूँ कि थिएटर की दुनिया के अंदर जब आप करियर की बात करते हैं तो ऐसा नहीं है कि मैं अगर डायरेक्टर हूँ तो मैं सिर्फ डायरेक्टर रहूँ. थिएटर की दुनिया के अंदर ज्यादातर ग्रुप्स के अंदर, जैसे आप में से शायद कुछ लोगों ने नाम सुना होगा, इंडिया के बहुत ही फेमस एमिनेंट जो थिएटर डायरेक्टर रहे हैं हबीब तनवीर, वो जो हैं वो डायरेक्टर भी थे, वो अपने उसका थिएटर ग्रुप का अकाउंट्स भी देखते थे, वो ट्रेन भी करते थे, वो गाने भी लिखते थे, वो म्यूजिक भी कंपोज करने में उनका हाथ होता था. तो इन मोस्ट ऑफ द ग्रुप्स इन इंडिया, जिस तरह से थिएटर इंडिया में काम करता है, बिकॉज it's very different from the western countries how they are performed, जहाँ पे हर कोई व्यक्ति जो है वो उसको थिएटर में रहते हुए लगभग सभी काम आते हैं. तो एक मल्टीटास्किंग वर्ड इस्तेमाल हुआ इससे पहले वाले सेशन के अंदर. थिएटर इज अ प्लेस वेयर अ लॉट ऑफ मल्टीटास्किंग इज रिक्वायर्ड always. So there will be chances when you are working in a theater or when you are working in a space or when you are working with a particular institution that you will get to do or learn more than one skill. आपको रिसर्च के स्किल्स भी सीखने पड़ेंगे क्योंकि आपको टेक्स्ट बनाना है नाटक का, आपको एक्टिंग के स्किल्स भी सीखने पड़ेंगे, आपको हो सकता है किसी टाइम पे कोई आपका लाइट डिजाइनर जो है वो अवेलेबल नहीं है तो आपको लाइटिंग के स्किल्स भी सीखने पड़ेंगे, यू नो. So there is a lot of multitasking, there is a lot of skill building and intersections of skill that happens in the world of theater. Some of the theater, if we look at theater training, there are several theater institutes in India. These are only the examples. This is not a comprehensive list at all. National School of Drama gives you a 3-year of full diploma in dramatic arts. आप फर्स्ट ईयर में बहुत सारी चीजें करते हैं, सेकेंड ईयर और थर्ड ईयर के अंदर आप उसके अंदर एक्टिंग में स्पेशलाइज कर सकते हैं, डायरेक्शन में स्पेशलाइज कर सकते हैं, या आप प्रोडक्शन डिजाइन के अंदर स्पेशलाइज कर सकते हैं. तो 3 अलग अलग स्ट्रीम्स के अंदर आप अपना स्पेशलाइजेशन कर सकते हैं. इट्स अ डिप्लोमा दैट यू कैन डू. It's a UG diploma, so you can apply right after your 12th class. इसको जाने के लिए आपका वहाँ पे ऑडिशन होता है, आपको वहाँ पे कुछ एक्सरसाइज दी जाती हैं, उसके बाद आपका इंटरव्यू होता है, सबसे पहले आपका एक एंट्रेंस टेस्ट होता है. So there are 3 stages through which they refine their candidates before they actually give them admission. And the course itself is very, very rigorous, right? Here I just want to stop sharing for a bit. And I want to show a very small clip of 3 minutes by the first director of National School of Drama, Mr. Ibrahim El Qazi, just to give you a glimpse of how National School of Drama works. Just give me a second.
Our theatre started with the Sanskrit drama ages ago. They said about Kalidas and Bhas invited style between these two groups. But this was no longer the case. In 1962, I was invited to head the National School of Drama. And I agreed to do so because I wanted to work on a national scale. I considered it as sort of a challenge to be able to produce actors who tackle the problems of the theatre conditions in the country. And therefore, the basic idea was to frame a syllabus that would serve the needs of the country as a whole. What we needed really was people strongly rooted in their own culture. The culture of the classical Indian theatre, the Sanskrit theatre, that of the traditional theatre in the various regions of the country, that of the contemporary Indian theatre from all the regional languages, Marathi, Bengali, Gujarati, Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, and so on. That of the Western theatre, because after all, the Western theatre has had such an important influence on the Indian theatre. And therefore, the theatre from the Greeks right down to the present day, particularly the theatre of Bertolt Brecht, because his ideas were significant in terms of social relevance, in terms of the use of theatrical conventions, been greatly influenced by the Oriental theatre himself. The theatre of Japan and China, the Asian traditions, which are so important constituent element in the relationship of Buddhism, for example, having gone from this country, gone to China and Japan, the manner it is reflected in their own theatrical culture. But while all this is all very well in terms of theory, how do you think of it in terms of practice? Theatre is a practical art. How do you translate all this knowledge in practical terms? And therefore, the courses in acting, the courses in theatre techniques, in stage design, in costume design, in lighting, in makeup, have all got to be related to this understanding, the basic understanding of the theory and the ability to communicate it in practical terms.
So here, Mr. Al-Qazi is speaking about the whole idea behind a particular institute, but actually what he's speaking is about also a larger idea of how theatre syllabuses in the whole country, are made. Just give me a sec. I will go back to my PPT. Yeah. So National School of Drama is one, and the kind of theory that he's talking about. A lot of institutes and universities in India also give you that grasp on the theory of theatre and performance studies. So School of Culture and Creative Expressions at Ambedkar University, Delhi, they give a master's degree in performance studies. Also now there is a new course, Masters in Dance Studies at Ambedkar University. Bhartendu Natya Academy, a very, very old, I think it was established in the late 80s, 88, 89. They do a 2 years training program. Ninasam Theatre Institute in Karnataka, 10 months of diploma. So there are a lot of these, places which give you a training in the practice of it. But schools like School of Arts and Aesthetics at JNU or Punjab University, Chandigarh, and so on, they also give you a grasp on the theory. That what is the historiography of theory? Like my own PhD is on the theatre and performance studies of women actors and performers in India. So there are opportunities that you can to train yourself. There are opportunities through which you train yourself to write about theatre, to do theatre, to perform as an actor, to do direction. And then once you are trained, a lot of these people also move out of these institutes and create their own groups. And at the same time, they also go to various other parts of India like Bombay, Bangalore, Northeast, Gujarat, नॉर्थ इंडिया में बहुत सारी जगह पे जहाँ पे जाके वो अलग अलग ग्रुप्स के साथ काम करते हैं. सम ऑफ देम ऑल्सो बिकम आर्टिस्टिक डायरेक्टर्स. एंड व्हेन आई एम सेइंग आर्टिस्टिक डायरेक्टर्स, दीज आर पेड पोजीशंस, राइट? Many of the theatre group people in India are also managing theatre spaces. तो आप रंग शंकरा अगर बैंगलोर में जाएंगे तो वहाँ पे पूरा एक टीम है जो उस इतने बड़े ऑडिटोरियम के स्पेस को देखती है. सो ट्रेनिंग के बहुत सारे अलग अलग माध्यम हो सकते हैं अगर आप थिएटर को अपना लाइवलीहुड बनाना चाहते हैं. आई वुड हाईली अर्ज दैट टू गेट इंटरेस्टेड इन थिएटर before you actually start training yourself is to watch a lot of theatre. Because unless you watch a lot of theatre, you wouldn't know that what actually theatre entails. Private institutes bhi hain, Barry John acting studios and so on and so forth. So training ke to bahut sare options hain, and once you are trained in some way or the other through group theatre, through these institutes and so on, you can get into acting, you can become an actor. You can do only direction. You can also become a scenographer. A scenographer is a upcoming field in India. It has always been there in the US and in the UK and in European countries. Scenography is a field in which you actually imagine how the play will look, right? It includes set design. It includes what all will be staged. How will I visualize it? Dramaturgy, on the other hand, is also a new field in India, which a dramaturg as a person is actually a connection between the text and the director. So dramaturg works a lot with the director. Theatre in education is a very, very important field in India. So when you look at the courses of BLEd at Delhi University, or you look at some of the other courses, how do you use theatre to transact in your classrooms with primary children from primary classes, children from elementary classes? And given that, for example, National School of Drama has an extension center in Tripura जहाँ पे सिर्फ थिएटर इन एजुकेशन के ऊपर काम होता है. दिल्ली के अंदर भी थिएटर इन एजुकेशन के ऊपर काम होता है. सो दैट ऑल्सो बिकम, सो इफ यू डू थिएटर इन एजुकेशन, यू हैव द अपॉर्चुनिटी टू गो एंड वर्क विद वेरियस स्कूल्स. आजकल बहुत सारे स्कूल्स के अंदर ड्रामा टीचर्स को हायर किया जाता है और उनको these are paid positions, again, that you are associated with one school, one after the other. People don't change their schools for many years. The other thing that you can also look is to work with repertory. So for example, the Little Theatre Group, the LTG, the Sri Ram Center in Mandi House, these auditoriums have their own repertories also. Repertories में क्या होता है कि वो जो जगह होती है उसके वो लोग जो थिएटर करते हैं उनका एक टीम होता है which is like a fixed group of people who are paid actors and they create plays one after the other. NSD also has a repertory, right? To be part of the NSD repertory, you don't need to be not necessarily need to be an NSD graduate, right? And these are also again things that if you want to get into the repertory work, this is something that you can look at. A very, very new and upcoming field is theatre management. How does theatre survive? What are the communication tools? What is the mission? What is the vision of a theatre group, of a theatre institute? Some people in India have now started working only on theatre management programs, right? That if you take up a theatre project, how are you going to fund it? How are you going to finance it? So this theatre management is becoming a very, very new and a very vibrant field, because a lot of people in India now are saying, बहुत सालों तक ये कहा जाता था कि theatre जो है वो barely survive करता है, right? And many people in India, theatre artists, they are now saying that why does theatre always have to barely survive? It should strive. It should actually it has the potential to do a lot of things, right? again, if you go to places like JNU, or if you go to Hyderabad University, or if you go to Chandigarh University, Patiala University, they also provide you opportunities to do research in theatre. And you can, after giving your NET exam and so on and so forth, you can actually get into academic teaching in the university, right? So theatre teaching, theory and practice, have become a very, very important career opportunity when we look at look at theatre. And some of the places, just to wind up, some of these places are providing very, very interesting courses, like theatre in education. In Shiv Nadar University, there is a whole department of theatre and performance studies. In OP Jindal, they don't have a particular department, but they are doing very interesting things with theatre. So I know a few people who are teaching there, who have done their courses from NSD and other places, and now they are teaching at these private universities as well. So if somebody is interested and want to get into private education and so on, that's also something that you can do. A lot of theatre people also make theatre their livelihood by doing workshops. तो बहुत सारे लोग जो हैं दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी के कॉलेजेस में जाकर उनका काम सिर्फ यही है कि वो वर्कशॉप्स ही लेते हैं, और वर्कशॉप ही उनका एक काम करने का और अर्न करने का एक साधन जो है, वो एक प्रोमिनेंट साधन बनता है. क्योंकि बहुत सारे जो ड्रामेटिक सोसाइटीज़ जिनके बारे में मैं बात कर रही हूँ, दे नीड थिएटर टीचर्स, दे नीड फैसिलिटेटर्स हु कैन टीच देम हाउ टू क्रिएट अ प्ले, right? So theatre archiving is also, there are some particular institutes in Delhi. These are archives who are constantly looking for people who can do archiving work vis-a-vis theatre and so on. So overall, there are several things that one can do. Production manager are the courses which are done, which are provided. आप प्रोडक्शन मैनेजर के जो हैं वो कोर्सेज कर सकते हैं. इफ़ यू गो टू यूके, गोल्ड स्मिथ में होता है, रॉयल स्कूल ऑफ स्पीच एंड ड्रामा, राडा जिसको बोलते हैं, वहाँ पे होता है. सो जब हम थिएटर की बात करते हैं तो हमारे जहन में जो एक इमेज बनती है कि एक्टिंग, डायरेक्शन एंड प्ले राइटिंग, राइट? थिएटर इज मच मोर देन दैट. It is a very, very wide field. Think of it as a constellation where theatre is at the center, and all these are branches, and these are the networks and constellations where theatre is happening. Again, I just want to wind up by saying this, that when one does theatre, one wants to do theatre. It is not something that I just don't want to do it, but because it is a livelihood opportunity. It's actually the other way around. And not only theatre, any art form, people who are practicing, you are seeing a lot of the eminent people in this slide, Utpal Dutt, Maya Rao, Sabitri Ji, Jyoti Dogra, all the Habib Tanveer, all these people took up theatre and made theatre their quote. They would not call it a career, but they would call themselves as theatre people. But they have done theatre all their lives, right? So theatre has a lot of potential. I would really urge for you to watch a lot of theatre, people who want to get into theatre, and also to understand that theatre is not only a career, but theatre also can be seen as a career and also as a method, as a tool to make a difference in the society. And with that, I will just end. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Dhanda, for your exciting presentation. And